Good
afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Business Community Provincial Government Workshop. Thank you for coming. I know it's not the most convenient time to have a business meeting, and we're very impressed by how many people turned out. It is cooler in here, though, that's for sure. So the overall purpose and objective of this session is twofold. One is to give you an idea and a good understanding of what the provincial government and the local team leaders are doing for the business community and for the economic sector. And that'll take up about a third of the session. And then the 2/3 of the session is probably the most important part, is for the business community to have a chance to speak to issues and workshop through some different topical areas like bringing business back to the community, loss of income, those kind of things. If you have the copy of the agenda, you'll see that. Because it's very important for us to understand as much as possible directly from the business community what the key issues are, so we can help create solutions and help the community create solutions, because really this is a ground-up recovery process. So I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jennifer Wetmore. She's going to introduce the people who are involved in the business recovery team that's been put together. And I think I'm the only one from out of town.
No, Dale.
Dale, I'm calling from out of town, that's right. And I'm not that far from out of town, I'm based in Penticton. So.
Hi everybody, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, thank you so much for coming today. I know it's incredibly short notice. I know it's not the best time. I really appreciate all of you coming out and participating in this. My name is Jennifer Wetmore. I am the Manager of Community Economic Development. I know pretty much all of you. Some of you I still have to introduce myself to. I am also the Team Lead Economic Recovery post-flooding event of 2018. And I want to introduce you to some of the people who have been working with me since that event hit to try to develop some of the opportunities that we feel need to be addressed moving forward, and to talk with businesses one-on-one. Kathy Corlick, thank you. Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce, Kendra Begg, Executive Director, Boundary Country Regional Chamber of Commerce. Amber, where are you? Downtown Business Association, Work and Play in the Downtown Core, and Chris Hammett is here. She is the liaison, also on the Downtown Business Association. In the back of the room is Dale Wielden and Colleen Bond, who have been working with me from British Columbia Economic Development Association. And then Larry is the other piece of what we're calling economic recovery team here on the ground. And Larry's going to introduce himself.
I forgot to introduce myself. Larry Olson. I'm the Regional Manager for Regional Rural Economic Development under the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development. And that's the last time I'm going to spout off about that thing. We'll get right into it. I think it's important for everybody to have an overview of what the different pieces, different agencies are on the ground and working out of Victoria and various other places. So I'm going to introduce you to Ron Burleson. Ron?
Thanks, Larry. Just put this down. So thank you and good afternoon. My name's Ron Burleson. I'm the Executive Director of the Provincial Disaster Recovery Branch. Same ministry as Larry, so we won't go through that again. We were formed last year in the wildfire events of 2017. Prior to that, government didn't take a large, comprehensive approach to recovery. We had the Disaster Financial Assistance Program, which we'll hear about later. But with large events like wildfires and like Grand Forks, catastrophic in nature, we recognized that we needed an approach that accounted for all the aspects of recovery. So to support community-led recovery, we established cross-agency groups, broadly speaking, touching on the economy, the environment, infrastructure, and social issues. For Grand Forks recovery, we've been working directly with the city and the regional district and supporting them in their recovery needs. It's couple of the agencies that we've got represented on our team. And at the end, I'll just ask the provincial reps to stand up. Of course, obviously, the economic component with Larry on our team, but we've been meeting all morning. And so we've got, of course, disaster financial assistance with the NBC. We've got Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We've got Health Emergency Management BC. And then, of course, we've got Forest Lands and Natural Resource Ops, the regional operations folks. Beyond that, we also have a partnership with Service BC. Gina Burrows, who I think many of you will know. She's on vacation right now and out of town, but strong connection with her group, as well as other parts of government, broadly speaking. So we want to tap into all the necessary decisions that we need to make to support you in your recovery. Key in our initial steps is to identify the needs, look at existing programming, see how we can support. And then if there's a gap, well, that's a discussion we have to explore at a broader level. So that's generally the approach that we're taking. We're continuing to work directly with you and through these processes with identifying gaps. And I should mention too that we were able to support Community Futures in hiring the BC Economic Development Association, for example. We take that information and we look to how we can best support the community in their recovery. So maybe just briefly, I'll ask the other provincial reps to just stand up so you can see what your support is here. If you could just stand up briefly, provincial reps. Some of them are here in the corner, so we've got a significant group here today, so thank you to everyone, and thank you, Larry and Jennifer, for the opportunity. I didn't have a word chart that I was going to put up, but I looked at the screen here and I thought that's not going to work, so I've probably skipped over a few details, and we'll do our best to answer questions throughout the afternoon.
Thanks, Ron. One of the key components and one of the first components to be on the ground is the Disaster Financial Assistance Program, and I'm going to ask Joanna Morrow. She's making her way up to the front. She's going to have a brief presentation on that. And by the way, as you notice, there is a Q&A session after the official presentation, so there'll be chances to ask people questions at that point in time.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is not so much speak about DFA generally, but I've been talking to Jennifer Wetmore, and I understand there's confusion as to why it's taking so long to get payment from the DFA program and what kind of documentation are needed. And I can tell you we have quite a few applications in our office, and they're all sitting, waiting, because we're missing documentation. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go through this and briefly describe to you what our legislation says about the program, what the requirements are, and why we need the documentation we do. You got a clicker? Oh, sure. Okay. So just the purpose of DFA, it's to provide assistance for your principal residents and to help small business owners and farm owners when their livelihood is at risk. So it is a limited program in that respect. Next slide. The program is legislated. So what we fund and what we can't fund is not up to myself or my recovery program officers. It is defined by the legislation. I agree that it's probably time for the legislation to be revised, but right now we're working within the existing laws of the province. Next slide. Okay. All right, thanks. So when we're looking at a small business, this comes straight quoted from the legislation. So the definition of a small business is a business managed by the owner on a day-to-day basis. And B and C are the two that I really want to focus on. The income from which is the owner's major source of income, and the gross sales of which are less than $1 million per year and employs less than 50 people. Next slide. A farm operation is similar, but a little bit different. Needs to be identified as a farm operation in the legislation. Again, owned and operated by someone who's a farmer, and is the means by which the owner of the farm operation derives the majority of that person's income. So that's an important distinction. We also see a lot of what we call corporations, limited companies. Again, they can be eligible as a small business. The owner of the company would be the shareholders. So if there's two shareholders, husband and wife, they jointly own the company. We determine that from the BC Registry Services document, and we can get that information directly from BC Online. But we do need, if you have a limited company, we need the applicant to provide us with a copy of the Central Securities Register, because we need evidence of who owns that company. And on the next slide. We also have a regulation that says, basically, the applicant needs to show us that without the claimed assistance, the business could be placed in jeopardy. That's a pretty general term. So what we've determined that to be is when the assistance exceeds 10% of the net income of the business. I can tell you, doing this for 10 years, I've only had one application out of thousands that didn't meet that. Because we're talking net income, not gross income. So we're looking at major income, and this is where it's important for you to understand. Income is Revenue Canada's definition of income. So I've got a little screenshot there of page 2 of a personal tax return, and you can see, you probably can't read that, but if you've ever done your tax returns, you see all those different sources of income. I've got some examples there. So we look at all of your income. If we go to the next slide, here's an example of actually how we calculate that. I took some actual examples, not from this event, but from a prior event from several years ago. Changed the names, so it's really anonymous data. But you can see we determine what the gross business revenue is. Then we determine the net income, which comes again from the tax return or from your financial statements.
Can you speak up a little? There's a air conditioner back there.
Oh, okay. Is this better, really close?
Hold it close. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we determine your net income. Then we start looking at what the major source of income is. In this case, there's only one owner. So that owner owns 100%. You can see that. On the next, the third column and fourth column out, you can see where we go from the tax return, the most recently filed tax return. We can see the different sources of income, the employment income, farming income, dividend income, RSP income, and we get that person's total income. In this example, the total income for the individual was $104,000. The gross business income was about $70,000 or $71,000. That person was not eligible for DFA because the business was not their major source of income. So go to the next slide. Another example. This is an example of a limited company. We have a gross business income of, I don't know if you can see that, but it's about $490,000. The net income was $447,000. 10% of that is about $45,000. The reason we need 10% is we need to know what threshold at which we can pay DFA. Now we look at the owners, and as I mentioned earlier, the owners are the shareholders. In this case, there are 4 shareholders, and they each own a proportionate share of the business. And we look at the income from each one. So the first one has old age income, old age security, some federal supplements, the same with the second one. The third owner has business income and some other income. The fourth owner also has business income. All 4 owners combined have an income of about $214,000. The gross revenue from the business is $492,000. So in this case, we can see that the business is the owner's major source of income. So that application at this point would be eligible for DFA. The other key criteria we have is, could the losses have been insured? Our regulation under the legislation is very clear. It says that eligible costs does not include costs or expenses recoverable at law or for which insurance was reasonably and readily available. So when we say, oops, go back.
Sorry.
When we say insurance was readily available, that means you can buy it locally. And when it's reasonable, we mean the price is appropriate considering the risk. It doesn't mean affordable, because that's something we could never determine. I wouldn't know how to define what's affordable for any individual. Next one. So we determined that by asking the applicant to provide us with information from their insurance company. So we have a template letter. So those of you who have applied for DFA are probably familiar with this letter that we ask you to take to your insurance company. And we ask the insurance company to confirm whether or not the applicant has overland flood insurance, whether or not they could have received that insurance, and if they could not have received the insurance, the reason why. And we use that to determine whether insurance was reasonably and readily available. So the next screen. We also need proof of ownership. Now, in most cases, that's really not a challenge. I mean, if you have a small business, you own the structure that you're in, the business. We go to BC Online, we can confirm who owns the land if it's a farm. For homes, we can go to land title, so we can determine that. But there are times when the business may be leased. Now, the contents, the equipment in your business, clearly that's yours, so it's not an issue. But you may have structural damage, but it's a leased property. We have to pay the owner of the business. So now we might actually need additional documentation to confirm, like a copy of the lease that says, as the leaseholder, you're responsible for the repairs to the structure. We would need that kind of evidence because in order to pay you, otherwise we would be paying you for something you don't own and aren't responsible for. And the next slide. Another one that could limit the availability is we can't fund something that's available through other programs. A typical example would be insurance available, like crop insurance through Ministry of Agricultural programs. So we wouldn't be able to pay for lost crops because that's something that can be funded through another program. On the next slide. Talking about eligible losses, rather than go into a lot of detail, we can look at the regulation itself. There's two schedules, one for small business and one for farm. And there's also the DFA guidelines. So I've brought a bunch of copies and put them on each table. And page 8 of the guideline talks about small business and page 10 about farm operations. And the next slide. And the amount of DFA, which people probably know already, but it doesn't hurt to clarify that. We'll pay 80% of the amount by which the amount of the accepted claim exceeds $1,000 to a maximum acceptable claim of $300,000. And that's straight from the legislation. And just to sort of finish off, I'll point out a few things that are definitely outside of our program's ability. Is we don't fund mitigation work. So work that is done to enhance or reduce a future risk is outside of what our program can fund. And I know for me personally that's a frustration because I firmly believe the more money you spend in preventing a disaster from happening, the less you have to spend recovering from it. But this program is specifically designed to put back what was damaged in a disaster. We don't compensate for land. We will restore essential access routes for small businesses and farms. And there is some ability to restore farmland that's actively being farmed and has been damaged or has extraordinary debris placed on it. For farmland, we can't go beyond the assessed value of the land, and that's BC Assessment Authority's value as farmland, which, as you probably know, is probably quite a bit less than market value. We don't repair structures that have been allowed to deteriorate. I don't see that often, but I mean, occasionally you'll find that something has just been ignored for 20, 30 years, and then it's damaged in a flood, and there's an expectation that the province's funding is going to put it back again. We expect buildings to have been normally maintained. We can't repair a structure in a floodplain unless it's built to appropriate standards. This is often a tough one, but we're looking at a structure that was built after the floodplain designation, and that was built when there were appropriate standards in place, when the local government said, these are the standards you must build a house to, and then the building was not built to that standard. So I have yet to come across anything in this area that would be ineligible for that reason. Most homes were built before floodplain designation. And the last one is where there's no proof of ownership, and I think I mentioned that earlier. And next slide. I think that's it. I'm going to leave it at that, but I just wanted to give you that sense of what it is we're looking for and why we're looking for it. So for a lot of you, I have files in my office, and we're waiting for copies of the tax returns. That's the big one we're waiting for, that financial information, because without that, we can't determine eligibility. So hopefully you'll do your best to get that into us. If not, just give our office a call if you're needing information or looking. wanting to know where your status is. We have 3 recovery officers and 2 admin staff, so we're not a huge department, but we work quite quickly, and we try our best to get money as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. So I'd like to move on to the next section of the presentation. So that's Dale Wielden, and I'm not sure if Colleen's going to come up or not.
Yeah, she is.
She is? She's sitting back there in the wings, in the weeds. The next section forward from here is about the BC Economic Development Association's recovery plan, and they're done the short-term recommendations so far. And I have to really give a lot of credit to this to not only Dale and Colleen, but to Jennifer Wetmore. They were very, very instrumental in making sure that that happened ASAP, and could provide the idea is to provide a pathway to recovery. Dale?
Great. Thanks, Larry. Thanks everyone for coming out, and on behalf of the BC Economic Development Association, really sorry you're having to go through what you're going through, but from everything that we've seen coming into the community, people are really working to try to make things better. Do we have a clicker? No. Okay, so you hear the clicker? Okay, so I just want to give you a little bit of background about the Economic Disaster Recovery Program, EDRP for short. So EDRP actually started in 2013, and 2012, and we've done a series of projects, which I'll talk about next, over the years. But we haven't really, the expertise, the knowledge, the programs, the information that we've used over the years has really come from a variety of different sources and partnerships that we've been able to develop. We have the International Economic Development Council has run RestoreYourEconomy.org, which is a fantastic resource of information on communities, how communities can recover, and the different programs that communities have put in place throughout North America to recover their economies after major disasters, including things like Katrina, Sandy, a lot of the major disasters that have impacted the United States in particular. So then the U.S. Economic Development Administration has been a tool that we've used and a resource that we've used over the years. The Economic Developers Alberta is, we provided training to them and helped them establish a recovery program in Alberta, both for the province of Alberta and Economic Developers, our sister or partner organization counterpart in Alberta. And then the Canadian Red Cross and also the province of British Columbia. In 2012, we started with Burns Lake after the mill explosion. It was our first attempt to go up and help a community overcome disasters, overcome a major disaster that impacted their community. Out of that, we sent up a team of 8 volunteers. The program is volunteers, by the way, that usually get involved in the program. The mill exploded. We went up there with a team and helped them put together a plan of 13 recommendations. 12 recommendations were implemented. All 12 were implemented. The mill is back in operation. They have an economic development function. There's a variety of different things, partnerships with Indigenous communities and downtown revitalization and things that happen. If you've been up there lately, the community is doing fairly well. The 13th recommendation was to an external organization, and it was not implemented. In southern Alberta, it was the worst flooding in Canadian history. Even though I think you probably think yours was worse, in southern Alberta, it's classed as the most expensive disaster in Canadian history. We went into Alberta with our information and helped again develop the tools for them to go out and develop. We then helped develop 11 different plans in different communities, including High River, Alberta, Canmore, a whole bunch of others. And we did a report for each one of those communities, and some communities have recovered better than others. In Washington, D.C., we were part of the U.S. Economic Development Administration, invited us as the only Canadian organization to be involved in the development of the United States Economic Recovery Framework, which is the framework they now use for economic recovery in places like California, Texas, Florida, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. They haven't fully followed everything, obviously. Some things are working better than others. But for me personally, I don't really feel that we provided a lot of value to them. They provided more value to us. It was a learning for us. I mean, the disasters that they've gone through, it really helped us really understand some of the things that needed to happen in communities. So I'd say we took more from that than actually provided. In 2017, we participated in the wildfires. Thanks to the province support, we started a business hotline where businesses could phone in to find resources and that they needed. And then we ran that hotline in partnership with Fortis BC, who is a partner of the association. And Fortis actually donated thousands of hours of their staff time to the running of a hotline for businesses to call. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, we just came back from there doing some hurricane recovery business assessments, and we developed a business assessment framework for the International Economic Development Council to use in the Virgin Islands, which is now being used in every U.S. state where there's a disaster. And so we were able to put that to practice while we were down there, and it's the same sort of tool that we've modified for the use here in Grand Forks when we go out and start doing the actual assessments of the businesses. And then, of course, here in BC and in Grand Forks, we're here now. And just prior to that, one of the things that we did that's not up there is we just finished coming back from Saskatchewan, where we assisted 30 different communities in the development of a pre-disaster plan, a pre-disaster economic recovery plan, so that the next time a disaster struck their community, it was a well-established process in how you would go about recovering the economy. Our focus is strictly the economy. We're not involved in the hard work that these other people do. We're in the work of the economy, and so that is what we've been trying to get BC communities to do, pre-disaster economic recovery plans. We just did them in, like I say, in Saskatchewan, 30 different communities, and hopefully we'll get some traction in British Columbia to do the same thing. So after the disaster. So really this is the recovery phase. It's the fourth phase, we call it the fourth phase of disaster. There's 3 different phases before it. The mitigation and response. And this phase can last a long time. And as much as probably none of you want to hear this, I also believe in honesty. Recovery is going to take years. Recovery of the economy in Grand Forks is going to take more than 1 year. It's going to take more than the 6 months that I'm assuming everybody wants to have. It could take you probably 3 to 5 years. High River, Alberta, some of you have talked to a lady from High River, Alberta. Since 2013 was the floods, we're now in 2018. They still have recovery managers in place. Flooding recovery takes an awful long time to recover, and I think you all need to acknowledge that right up front. And investment in economic development capacity, both from the local, regional, provincial, federal agencies, needs to become more essential into the communities after disaster strikes. So we sent a team of volunteers into the community for the first visit into the community to develop a short-term recovery plan. And I'll just go through everybody that's there, so if we go back up, I just want to introduce, these are volunteers. I want to make sure they get the recognition that they deserve. So the pear-shaped guy on the left-hand side is me. Then we have beside him Brian Coombs, is the President CEO for the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation. And then of course we have Jennifer. Then we had Sue Kenny at the front there from Community Futures, Peaceful Yard in Dawson Creek. The one behind her is Jim Anderson from the Venture Kamloops, City of Kamloops. Then we had Colleen Bond, and who has been involved in multiple disasters, working with us to help them put together the plans. And then of course we have Wendy from the Community Futures office here. Every one of these guys volunteered their time to come here. In the cases of like Jim and Brian and Sue, their organizations allow them to take the time to come to the community, so they're donating their time, giving back to the communities, just like we hope Jennifer or Wendy or the community will donate their time in return to go to another community in the future. When things are improved here, how can they go to the communities? Sometimes when we do disasters, we bring in experts from Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina, or other disasters across Canada, that how they have helped recover their communities, and we bring those teams members of volunteers. We have about 50 to 60, sometimes 80 volunteers, I think, right now across North America that we can call upon, that if they can get the time to come, that they can come. In some cases, they'll pay their own expenses, but in most cases, they won't. So the team visit, we came June 24th to the 27th. We prepared some pretty extensive briefing documents for the team members to have so that they understood the situation as to what we knew coming into the community. We did an initial briefing with Community Futures. We did a tour of the community with the focus on the impacted areas. We did some individual and confidential meetings with stakeholders and businesses. We met with the Downtown Business Association representative and the Chamber of Commerce representative, Visitor Information Center, City of Grand Forks Council, the Red Cross, and the Regional District, Kootenai Boundary, Christina Gateway Community Development Association, and discussions with 25 plus individuals and businesses. And then we did a debrief with CFB regarding the overall findings and then discussions on report recommendations. I have to say, there's a lot of people that really stood out. I don't want to point them out at this point in time, but is it Rolly? Where's Rolly? Back here? Yeah, fantastic service that you're providing out there. It was great to have you at a lot of the meetings, and you really drew out the information that we needed, so thanks very much for that. You're fantastic. So we reviewed the input gathered from the communities. We spent a lot of time on the phone with different representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture, Fortis BC, DFA, just to talk about the different programs, some of the things that we've heard, some things that we would like to see changed. Things obviously aren't going to happen fast. The word legislation keeps coming into mind. But things that I think that this is, people are working hard to make things work for the community. Developed some draft recommendations. We circulated out to our team members for input. We finalized those recommendations, and then we developed the plan based on, we focused on three different areas: capacity, business recovery, and communications and marketing. Under the capacity issues, we've made recommendations around the need for a business recovery and transition manager, which Jennifer, I believe, your position, which hopefully you'll talk a little bit about that. Did you want to talk about that now, or just
Sure,
what you're doing?
So I'm playing a dual role. I am the manager of community economic development, and I know a lot of you from that perspective. I've also taken on the role of business recovery. I'm calling it economic recovery team lead with the recovery team here at the regional district and working with Larry from the province. The role, as I see it right now, and it is ever evolving, is to liaise with all of you as business owners, to work with the Chamber, the DBA, Economic Development Association, to get a handle on what those challenges and unmet needs are, and to advocate for business at the recovery table level and at the provincial and federal level. That's it in a nutshell.
So we also recommended by the way, under the Business Recovery and Transition Manager, our recommendation is for a minimum 3 years. We believe that we're looking at a minimum of 3 years, and then it can be reevaluated probably at the end of year 2 is to see whether it's going to need to go longer than the 3 years. Again, some of this will come out in a longer term report that we'll prepare. We recommended the establishment of a business recovery and transition advisory team. When we're here, we saw a lot of different people that were running around doing their own things, in some cases duplicating. And it's best if everybody's sort of working together and that's coordinated. And so we recommended the establishment of a business recovery and transition advisory team. We recommended also a business and downtown improvement coordinator. These two organizations are doing phenomenal things for Grand Forks with very limited capacity. And there needs to be some assistance to help them bring up capacity. Everybody has to have some more capacity, as we mentioned at the beginning, to help do things from a recovery perspective from the economy, and these two organizations play a pretty critical role. And then, of course, the Regional Economic Development Advisory Committee, so that not only in the short term, that regionally it's working together. This isn't, and our plan isn't just regional, but not only is it not just local, sorry, it's regional. But we really believe that a stronger Economic Development Advisory Committee is needed, that is more sector-based and has some more representation from the economy on that committee. We recommended the establishment of a revitalization zone. One of the things that we've seen in the past when we've been to other communities, not saying that's going to happen here, but we want to make sure it doesn't happen here, that a revitalization zone can help to make sure that any improvements that you make to your businesses doesn't impact your assessed value. And so that longer term, the increase in taxation or increase in cost isn't going to impact your tax bill for 5 to 10 years, depending on how it's structured. So we're recommending the establishment of a revitalization zone for the downtown core, and that hopefully special permission can be granted so that it can be retroactive back to before the floods, so that that anything that's been improved since then doesn't get impacted. The City of Grand Forks and the RDKB Financial Relief Program. So we heard stories of tipping fees, we heard stories of a variety of different things that could be waived, and some consideration that the waiving of these types of fees that happen. That FortisBC natural gas and electricity billing relief, I can tell you, I can't say much more than this, but I can tell you that we've been through an extensive consultation with FortisBC about an application to go to the Utilities Commission to make sure that there is some billing relief for you from your gas bill, and also on the reconnection fees that may have had to happen. This is a longer process because it has to go to Utilities Commission. They're a public utility, so they have to get permission from that. But we're continuing with that, and things are looking like we're going to move forward here. So hopefully something new will come out in the next couple of weeks. Business assessments and economic impact. So again, we're going to be we talk about that. We're going to be going out and actually getting a really good assessment of the business impacts, so that that information could be used to help identify additional business supports that could come both for the short term and the long term for the businesses. Recommending some insurance and DFA workshops. We had connections with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who then helped with working with Jennifer, came up to the community and did some one-on-ones. We believe that there's still a lot of misinformation or information needed with businesses on what DFA can do and what insurance should have done or should be doing or could be doing, and to help people get through that maze of information that's required. And then also some monthly business recovery workshops, so that more information is available to the businesses to help them understand what is happening with the community with economic recovery and how they can play a role. And then we talked about the communications and marketing program. We talked about the need for open for business campaigns that need to happen. And this is the nice thing about pre-planning, is that you have some of these things in place that can get launched so that people understand you're open for business. I tell you, you go into downtown Grand Forks, people are driving by missing some pretty incredible shops in the downtown, incredible restaurants in the downtown. They're missing that are open, that people really fought hard to get their businesses back up in operation. Let's make sure that that people know that those businesses are open. We are suggesting a website landing page where all of the information you need, whether it's insurance, DFA, other support programs, Fortis, whatever, is available to you. It's easy for you to find that information instead of you having to make phone calls and visit different offices, that it all be under one page. And then a social media campaign, maybe run with some other agencies to make sure people are aware of what's happening in the community. There's some phenomenal stories to tell of recovery already. Businesses that have open businesses, those need to be celebrated. Every time a business opens, it needs to be celebrated. Every time a business says, hey, we're going to rebuild, but we're going to double our size, that needs to be celebrated. That needs to be told. And we've heard those stories in Grand Forks, and that information needs to get out there. Wayfinding, it's a community topic that's been talked about for years and hasn't happened, but people don't know what's in your downtown core, and you need some better wayfinding. We definitely recommended that happen as soon as possible, and that the financial supports be provided. And then we also recommended some post-flood business walks. The local government needs to get out there, talk to the business community, there needs to be dialogue going both ways. So the next steps, we're going to do the business and economic impacts with some assessments, we hope to be. We're going to have another EDRP team visit, likely in September. And then we come here as needed. And then the long-term recommendation report will be submitted probably prior to the end of September, which will include recommendations for the community, for the region, and for the province to hopefully make recovery a better process, not only for Grand Forks, but for other communities in the province in the future. So, just a final few comments. Communities are not prepared to rebuild the economy, so you have to be patient. When a disaster strikes, communities, associations in the province must all pull together, and I think we see that with the group that's in this room. Businesses need to prepare, so we would encourage you as businesses to make sure that in the future you have business continuity plans, other types of plans and programs in place, and there's going to be some training out there that hopefully can come into the community to help businesses get better prepared for the next time a disaster strikes. Be aware of the resources that are out there. We've got a lot of resources already in the report that are out there, but be aware as new ones come available, hopefully that information through the communication tools we're suggesting are there that you're aware of, and then be patient. Unfortunately, it all takes time. That's it. There's our contact information. I'm not sure if the presentations are being shared, but if you have anything you want to add or suggest, please let us know.
Thanks, Dale. Just wanted to let you know that as a result of the recovery program that Dale and Colleen have put together with the assistance of all the volunteers, there's a number of initiatives that we're pursuing right now, and some of them have already started, including the business recovery manager position, which has been funded, the business assessment program, gap analysis. I think I can honestly say that funding for that is probably imminent. There's the more short-term one that we're looking at applying for funding under the Rural Dividend Fund. I'm not sure if many of you know that, but there's a special component of the Rural Dividend Fund called Special Circumstances Funding, which removes some of the guidelines and makes it more flexible for organizations like Community Futures to apply for funding for those types of initiatives. One of them is was mentioned already earlier, which was bringing business back to Grand Forks, which would include marketing and events coordination, as well as website development and things like that. And we're looking at, I think they're applying for 1 or 2 years for that type of position and initiative. Looking more towards the long term, so that the economic resiliency is going to be, more futuristic and sustainable, is a regional economic development strategy that would include Grand Forks and the city, Area D, I believe. The other one is, ever since I moved into the area, I've heard talk about the fact that there's not a community center here that people can, have small conferences and things like that. We're trying to get funding for a feasibility study and a plan for that to happen. So that's something that the community can look forward to if we can get, that done. The other one too, and this is something we'll touch on some of you and some of it won't affect you, but trying to get funding also for youth at risk. And I think as far as that affects the small business people, some of that will include subsidized employment for youth at risk, so some small businesses will benefit from that too as well. I'd like to get into the Q&A session right now, and Kevin Gates has volunteered to do that. I saw him do such a wingman's job at the town hall meeting, and he's volunteered to do it this time.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thank you, Larry. And for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Kevin Gates, and I'm the Deputy Manager of Operations with the city, as well as doing a couple other things depending on where the day takes me. So for this Q&A, we have, well, I was going to say quite a bit of time, but looking at the number of people out there, we've got a little bit of time for everyone. And the focus really is, what do you need to take your next step? So what is the current barrier that you're facing that's preventing you from moving forward with your economic recovery? So I think given the challenges with getting sound from there to here and back over to there, If folks can come up for their questions so everyone can hear. Unfortunately, we don't have a wireless mic here. But if you have a question, what it'll get you to do is to form a line on this side, just so that we can get through everyone. And if for whatever reason that doesn't work, put your hand up and shout, and we'll find a way of getting sound to come to you. So if you guys want to come up with a question, and we'll get you to speak nice and loud. I will say with this microphone, if it's not pointed at your mouth, you don't hear anything. So make sure you point it at your mouth. Just keep it.
Hi. These days, a lot of people have two sources of income in their family, and it's necessary for survival and paying a mortgage and supporting a business. So I'm just wondering how DFA looks at that when there's two sources of income in the household, but because the business isn't the primary source and there is a secondary source of income, that secondary source of income is essential for people to sustain their lifestyle and their house and their business. So can DFA answer some questions regarding that?
Okay, we'll get the DFA person up here. We'll also ask you, and I forgot to do that, is please just say who you are. Most people know who you are, but nonetheless, it's always nice to introduce yourself when you're talking.
Thanks for the question. I hear that a lot, and I have a lot of sympathy. I can tell you that our staff is as flexible as possible in interpreting our legislation, but we have no choice but to apply the legislation as it's written. So if there is, if two people own a business, we have to look at the major source of income, and that may not always be to your advantage. But sometimes we see small businesses that have. Well, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I had someone who operated a little shop, which was a little pottery shop, and did some landscaping and did some gardening, did a variety of little things, and also had some rental income. And her husband also had employment income. So we looked at her small business and said, these little operational things are really one business. The little flower shop and the pottery shop and things like that. Rental income is not. You couldn't link that together. But we combined those little groups and pieces into one business. And we were able to say, yes, that is the person's livelihood. That was the major source of income for the family. So it's just an example of how we try to be flexible. But I can't work outside of my legislation. I don't know what else to tell you, except I know that our legislation will be reviewed probably within the next year, and it is one of the recommendations I'm making. But we do have to be mindful of the fact that we have to look at the person's livelihood. We can't just allow a cottage industry or somebody's hobby to be funded. So we'll look closely at how we can best meet people's needs. But right now, we're still limited to the legislation. But as flexible as we can be within that. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer.
Okay, so a small glimmer of hope. If you can link together all your different enterprises into something that looks like the same business, then you might be able to work with it if you are in the situation where you have multiple streams of income.
Brian Fate, Riviera RV Park. I guess my main question is probably the same as everybody else's here, is we've all gone through huge losses economically, and for a lot of us, the recovery, like for us personally, hundreds of thousands of dollars are washed down the river. And our only recovery at this time is I got to do it with funds I don't have, with revenue that I can't really generate because my revenue source is literally dried up. And I know that it appears there might be some hope here with some of these other departments. I've, like a lot of you, I've had frustrations with DFA, and for a lot of my needs, it's quite useless. And I understand the legislation that they're having to deal with. But I would really like somebody from the province to get going on creating something that could get us the help that we need so that economically we can get our community back up and running and get some resources into our hands so that we can do this. I don't know, whoever wants to respond to that.
I'll consider the statement, but Brian, before you walk away too far, I'm going to pin you down, just because what I need and what I want from everyone is what you need in a sentence or two sentences for your next step. What do you need?
Well, I got a lot of work that needs to be done at my RV park, and I don't have the resources to do it. It would be nice to have some financial assistance for that.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Hi, my name is Mike. I have the Country Hideaway RV park out in Gilpin, the Gilpin area, and like Brian, resources. My answer is probably the same as a lot of people's. What do I need? Money. There's a shortage of RV parks, campgrounds and stuff in this community. People are just passing right through right now. We're getting calls and calls and calls every day. The provincial government, I just seen, they just released another 400 approval, another 400 campsites in their government campsites, because there is not enough around here. It doesn't set us aside from anybody else, the other businesses and stuff. One of my questions, and it wouldn't be a question for Ms. Morrow as well, it's a disaster financial assistance. My situation, I had purchased a property last year. I've never shown an income off that property. How in the hell do I show it as a major source of income? I did an appeal last year. They worked on it, did what they could with it, took a previous owner's income, which didn't equal mine. It was interesting, the example that Ms. Morrow had on the wall there, the poor little fella that had nothing was turned down. The other fellas who seemed to generate a lot more money had a lot. If my business produced $999,000 and I was an unsuccessful doctor and made $998,000, I'd be eligible for DFA. My total was $84,000 and I was ineligible. Money, folks. We need some provincial, we need somebody to tell us where in the hell we even go for help.
Yeah.
I have written letters to MLAs, we've written letters to officials, we wrote a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau, and we get, oh, your DFA people handle that, go see them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. That sounds like a specific question for DFA on your circumstances. Are you comfortable getting an answer after?
I think DFA is, she's answered, her hands are bound. She can't do legislation. Who the hell do we get to change the legislation? That's my question.
Gotta change.
And have we got a year? No, we don't.
No, we don't have.
No, that's very frustrating.
Either I am going to jump on a log and go down the river,
Bankrupt.
or I need to pull out. I can't afford to rebuild.
That's right.
I'm done.
So I won't pick too much on you, but I will assume when you say you need money, it's money for repairs to the campground.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and you know, and I think there should be something to that, to even be added to that. If somebody is really willing to rebuild their flower shop, rebuild their dry cleaning shop, they should be allotted that money. You see a lot of what happens with DFA is people get the money and they walk, they run away, they're done. They take their money and they're gone. They don't want to rebuild in the community anymore. Is there zero finance loans from the government? Is there something never pay plan? Is there something? There's nothing.
Okay. So maybe we can flag that, and a partial answer here, but flag that as something creative. Could be a different way of 0% financing or what have you.
First of all, I can't speak to anyone's specific situation, so I can't.
I understand. No,
I can't.
you've answered that
It's
question.
private, I know. Where you can go, I think that's one of the roles of your MLA, and I don't want to pass the buck, but it doesn't hurt to drop in at the MLA's office or give them a call. I mean, that's where legislation starts. I do my part because as the act is kind of, the reviews are coming up, it's part of my role to make recommendations, and those recommendations are based on what I hear. So when I hear things like this in the community, it's really important for me because it's part of what I need to say to my bosses, to say, the act isn't meeting people's needs anymore. I'm recommending some changes. And I don't mean everyone's going to get everything they want, but clearly the act is due for some revision. So, but I think don't underestimate the value you have in that grassroots working with your local MLAs.
I'll get to you in a sec here, Larry. I just wanted to get a quick show of hands. How many people have applied for DFA for their business in the room here? Hands up nice and high, everyone who's applied for DFA. Okay, and keep your hand up if you've received any DFA. Okay, so I think that's a good, oh. Oh, and sure, and it might be good, so if you've actually been denied, so if you have actually, yeah, quite a few have actually been denied. I'll get,
I was on the phone to Tamara in Saanich, who's handling on behalf of the DFA, and for small business, I was told point blank, DFA is going to fund people that do not have overland flood insurance. They do not look at any loss of income or billeting or anything like that for persons. And I said to her, I said, well, maybe they should look at it again for people that are in that situation that have coverage but have absolutely no way of making an income to pay their bills or anything like that, and subsidize them, as well as, okay, subsidize the people that choose not to have flood insurance, can't have flood insurance or whatever. You know what she said to me? She said, would you like to take your claim back?
no, that's tough. That's tough.
That's pretty rude,
Yeah.
I thought.
Okay, so Larry, and then we'll get back for the answer. Okay, Joanna? Is there an appeal process for you?
There is an appeal process. Now, first of all, I've only been speaking to small businesses and farms. You can also apply for DFA as a homeowner and as a residential tenant and as a charitable organization. For homeowners and tenants, of course, we aren't looking at income. We're looking at, do you own the home? Is it your principal residence? Because we can't fund secondary homes or rental property. So I just wanted to make that really clear. And insurance, again, we're limited by our legislation, so if you could have bought insurance, we're unable to provide assistance.
And just really quickly, before you run away, Joanna, what is if folks do want to appeal, who's their first point of contact?
So when you receive your letter telling you that you're not eligible, or if you do receive a letter with the amount of eligibility, you can appeal your eligibility and you can appeal the amount of DFA, and the letter does provide instructions on how to do that. I also want to point out that so far we have paid, I think as of Monday, almost $1.7 million to individuals in Grand Forks.
Not businesses.
No, not businesses. And a lot of the businesses, what we're waiting for is the financial record so that we can determine whether or not they're eligible.
They're not ever sick, and they deny it.
Okay, Larry, did you want to chime in?
Yeah.
With respect to the broader question of provincial financial assistance, one of the steps that's being taken right now, and some of you have seen copies of the survey and are completing them, before anybody in the province can go to cabinet and suggest or recommend certain types of activities or funding, there needs to be a quantification of, okay, what is the level of assistance that's appropriate, and also what form of assistance is going to be. So it's really important that you participate in that process and do it as soon as possible, and we're already starting the survey process, and that's one of the reasons why the surveys have been put out already. There you go.
Okay, so we'll do another quick poll here. How many people, show of hands, are frustrated with the process they're in? Okay, and I think Larry was saying he wants to hear that, about getting a sense of what's going on and how things can be made better in terms of how to talk to people and get the ball rolling. So I don't know if you have your contact info there, Larry, but certainly.
No, I'm not going to give it out. No, I'm just kidding. It's just Larry Olson at gov.bc.ca, but also the local business recovery manager, Jennifer Wetmore, is also a contact point for, and she can give my information too in case you haven't got it. And it's larry.olson at gov.bc.ca.
So great, and I'll just reiterate that the more information this recovery team gets from you, the more they can build a case to get the resources that you guys need. So even though it takes a little bit of time and it can be frustrating to repeat your asks, it is important that they get documented, and that's part of what this is.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Houghton. So clearly we need some solutions that happen more quickly. and go beyond what the limitations of legislation allow. So some creative, more quick solutions is what we'd be looking for. And I think this question would be for Dale Wielden. This goes to this. So you mentioned that it takes 3 to 5 years for economic recovery, and it's clear that that kind of time a lot of us don't have, businesses don't have. And so what I would like to ask is, what are some of the reasons it takes so long? You know that from your experience, and what can we do to help speed up the process? What kind of creative solutions can we come up with? It's been said a number of times here today that there's a whole lot of people here who are willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears. So I guess what we need from our leaders is, how do we direct our blood, sweat, and tears in the most effective way?
And Jennifer, just as with everyone else, and to be fair, what do you need for your next step?
What I need is leaders to tell me exactly the most effective, most efficient way to direct my energy to get the economy going again. So one of the things that has come up recently, the visitor center did tourism is down. So how do we tell people specifically, how do we get the word out there that we're open for business? And so what steps, that's what I need to know, is what steps I specifically need to take, because I have a bunch of different types of businesses. I'm self-employed. What do I and other people here need to do to expedite this situation? Clearly, you've learned from experience, it takes such and such an amount of time, but if we're all putting our heads together, how do we shorten that time?
So it's a really good question. When I say 3 to 5 years, I mean, we've seen situations where things turn around fairly quickly, and we've seen things where it takes years. An example just of taking years, I was just in New Orleans, and New Orleans is still recovering from the disaster that hit them. There's certain things, infrastructure-wise, those types of things that take time to rebuild. You're going to probably run into that even in Grand Forks, as infrastructure-wise, it's going to take time. From an economy side of things, the biggest hurdle that you have to overcome. When I came to Grand Forks, June 24th, I saw a beautiful downtown. Some businesses closed, but I saw a beautiful downtown that the average person doesn't know about. And all they know about with the beautiful downtown is the global media that ran stories about how Grand Forks downtown was ruined. I'll tell you a story about Canmore, Alberta. Canmore, Alberta, when the flooding hit in Alberta, they went from 100% occupancy bookings to less than 3% overnight because of a story about how Canmore was ruined on Global News, or CTV, one of them. When we went to Canmore and we did a recovery plan, one business was flooded in the basement. It was a bookstore in downtown Canmore, and a little bridge on the outskirts of town was ruined, and it wiped out a couple of houses. No businesses were damaged, no hotels were damaged. That really should have stopped those people from coming. The highway, Trans-Canada Highway was closed for 3 days. But it was the perception that it took for them to rebuild the perception that their town was closed. The perception still is that Grand Forks is closed. You need to be making sure that you're telling the story, which is why we talk about the need for social media, the need for... I can't sit here and say you're going to give you a check for $20,000 or $50,000. I mean, those are whole government policy decisions that we have very little control over. We do think that plans and programs need to be put in place for future things. That's not going to necessarily help today. But me giving you a check for $20,000 even isn't going to restore the economy back to where it was without hard work of teams and people pulling together. And I'll give you an example of Calgary, Alberta. Calgary, when they got flooded, they said, we're not going to allow this to stop us. And you may all remember how that city pulled together and everybody worked together and started the stampede up 2 weeks after the flood, when they thought they would never have that stampede that year. But everybody pulled together because that was the major event of the year for that city. And they brought it together. And then they started an Open for Business campaign that the province, thank goodness, said, no, you can't just do Calgary's Open for Business. You need to do the region's Open for Business and change the advertising a bit. But everybody pulled together, the businesses, and they all had to put stuff in, they put money in, they bought into the program. Everybody pulled together and again, highlighted how Alberta was open for business, Southern Alberta was open for business. And that's what it's going to take, is people pulling together to do it. An Open for Business campaign should be something, to me, that should be running now.
So who's running that?
Nobody that I know of.
But downtown, the golden block downtown for mercantile business, you look on one side of it and 9 out of 12 locations are, there's no way they're open for business till the end of the summer.
Yep.
So the only real businesses open downtown are a handful of restaurants and work and play in one or two other places. I mean, we're not open for business.
Some of them are though, and you need business. You need people in those businesses. You need people in those businesses to be supporting the ones that are already open, because that's going to help you get the other ones open too.
I get that, but the bulk of downtown is not.
Nope, it's not, and it's not, and we see that. And it's unfortunate though. Yeah, I know you need the answer right now. Like I know you need the economy to be rebuilt right now. It's not going to happen. It's going to take time.
Why? That's what I'm asking. What are the specifics?
Because communities are not prepared. And there's things that aren't in place. Like, I mean, we've seen it in Virgin Islands. As much as you can have a great plan, things happen. A disaster happens. It damages your downtown. It damages a part of your industry that maybe you didn't have as part of your plan. But it still takes time to rebuild it. If Toco, is it Toco the mill? Was it? No. Interfor, and then Rockwell? Rockwell. I mean, if those two businesses themselves have just completely been devastated, they have the capacity maybe as a corporate level to sort of get things going a little faster, but they'd still be shut down. They'd still be shut down, and it takes time to rebuild it. There isn't going to be a quick fix. I wish I could tell you, trust me, I don't want to be the guy that's this sad guy up here telling you it's going to take 3 years. It breaks my heart. But it could take you 3 years to get people coming back here, to get those businesses. I can't change legislation.
So, okay, so you said...
Legislation needs to be changed. I've said that for
you said
years.
There's some things that aren't in place. What needs to be in place?
Well, I think we're getting there. We've got the recovery
If you
game.
get some bucks into the hands of everybody here,
Yeah.
we'll rebuild our own economy.
And if you maybe remember the slide, we said that.
Yeah.
And we're saying that, but we can't do that. Like, we can't control that, right?
Well, yeah, but who does?
I think we're gonna jump in here and hear from the recovery manager here. Keep in mind that there's a short-term plan. There's a short-term plan that's being developed as long as the mid to long-term plan. So asking what are the next steps, and it's hard to remember back on the slides, but you did have those kind of.
Okay, then they need to be reiterated, because there were slides that just went, poof. So, that's what
For sure, and we'll work at getting the results of that plan out.
Is that report on your table? I think they're happy to get you a copy as well.
Jennifer, I can email you that, I can drop it off, I can give you paper copies, whatever. In response to your question, we need to continue to work together, and the business community has been incredibly receptive. You need to participate in the impact assessment survey that we will be on the ground delivering in the next 2 to 3 weeks with the support of these guys and with the support of people from Community Futures Boundary. Participation in that survey is going to give us data that we can bring to the province to request for those business supports to try to address the unmet needs. That's priority number 1 from my perspective. The other piece around Grand Forks is open for business, not fully. We need to continue to drive traffic through Grand Forks and to generate income to try to recoup the lost income that all of you have experienced. Those are the 2 priorities in my mind over the next month. But you need to continue to talk to me, and you need to continue to bring these concerns to me so that I can take them forward to the recovery table and to the province. And I don't know if anybody from the province wants to step in here and try to, maybe further address the cash in pocket piece. But that's my take as somebody who's here on the ground working with all of you. Does that address anything, Jennifer, in the short term?
Yeah, so I think what I'm asking is specifically,
what can we do? And if you're spearheading this and we go to you,
Yeah.
it sounds like you're taking the next step to draw more funding to us from the province. Is that correct?
I'm making those requests, and my mechanism right now is that impact assessment survey that we will be coming around asking for input
That
on.
survey will provide the data, as Jennifer said, that's needed so that the arguments can be made. And they're receptive.
My name's Dave Peterson. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister with the provincial government that's responsible for recovery program. And I kind of come back. I actually wanted to sit and listen for a bunch more before I stood up, because I'm trying to listen to you more than come here to say something. But I felt I should come up now, and I wanted to respond to where do you go for help? Well, I've actually come here. You don't have to go somewhere else. That's what we are here for. That's what Jennifer is doing. That's what Ron Burleson and the team are doing, is the conduit through them to get the help from the provincial government. And absolutely, as Gavin is saying, as Jennifer has been saying, you know, it probably seems like it's just one more hurdle for you. But we actually do need to really be able to crisply say, what's the need? What do you need out there? In lots of cases, what our job is actually lining it up with programs that already exist in the provincial government. So it's not we don't have to go and ask for new dollars or that. The first place we can go, because it's by far and away the quickest, is we go and find out, so what's already out there that we just need to direct into Grand Forks, link up with what you need. And again, that's why we need that information. That's why we keep asking for that information. You know, unfortunately, and I guess I joined kind of Dale in him saying a lot of the times it's not necessarily good news. The province actually doesn't have a big history of stepping in and helping communities in recovery. And if we did have a big history of that, then we'd already have a game plan all laid out. And we'd have the guidebook, and what we do have is a history of helping in the pure response. That's the DFA side, and as Joanna has pointed out, it only goes so far. And Dale's pointing out that it'd be a lot better if we could have that legislation changed so it can go farther, but it doesn't right now. It only goes so far, and it only really is designed around helping you respond to what happened. But the recovery, the community recovery, the business recovery, the individual recovery, we don't have the game plan for that now. Sorry to tell you that, but we're absolutely here to work with you to get to that point. And as Dale said, you know, that's what he wants to, and he keeps reminding me that that's what he wants to do, is make sure the province does end up with a game plan. Won't necessarily help Grand Forks where you're at, it'll help the next community. We've been really involved as well in the communities in the Caribou that got hit by the wildfire last year. Totally different circumstance. Some of the situations very, very comparable. Some of it not comparable at all. So not everything we learned from there can you apply to Grand Forks by any means. But still, we learned from that. We're building on that. But we're here to work with you to get you to the point that you need to get to. And I guess that was the main thing I wanted to emphasize. Definitely here to listen. I'm the conduit then to bring those messages back to government when we actually have identified the needs and we're looking for dollars, or in the meantime when we're looking to how to direct the programs more locally. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that as well.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So to be clear, your first point of contact is Jennifer. Jennifer, email, is that the best way for folks to get in touch?
You can stop by and see me, or you can phone me at the office.
Okay, so the Community Futures Boundary Office, which is right off the highway there, everyone's seen the sign. Email jennifer@boundarycf.com. Phone number 442-2722, extension 225.
I also wanted to say that Jennifer and I are working hard to get an application for funding through to the special circumstances envelope of the Rural Dividend Fund that will fund a position that's a marketing and events coordinator for the community to drive business back to downtown and to other parts of the area. We're hoping that we can get a positive answer on that fairly quickly, but that will put some feet on the ground and money in they'll have a budget for the developing the marketing tools we talked about for social media. And, you know, like I said, Jennifer and I are working hard on that, and we're also working very closely with the Chamber of Commerce and the DBA on that one too. And they have had a lot of say and input into what that position would look like and what their role would be and what kind of activities they would be engaged in. So we're hoping that we can maybe announce something like that fairly soon. It's not my program. I can't make that decision. It has to be made by someone else. And but we're hoping that it'll go through and we're trying to get it through as quick as possible.
So for clarity, that is my program, but I don't make the decision, the minister does. But I'm the one that's responsible for taking that application and getting it through and getting it in front of the minister for that decision.
Fantastic. So we have lots of people working in the room towards getting some action happening on the marketing front. I'll just do another quick poll of the business owners here. How many folks have a website or a Facebook page? And just keep your hand up, keep your hand up, keep your hand up if you have updated it since the flood. Which is fantastic. So everyone who has a website or social media is on top of updating it. So that's helpful, right? Because I know just personally shopping downtown, it's okay, is that store open, is it not open? So if you do have a website and social media, super important to keep it up to date with if your hours are changed, are you in the same place, or if you're open, if you're closed, that kind of thing.
My name is Paul Plamondon. This has been pretty bad for everybody here. I got hit 3 times. My house got flooded at 2 feet around the house. It took about 7 acres of my property, my farm equipment, balers, swathers, rakes, my hay that I had stored, and then I also own the bowling alley downtown, and I got whacked there. So if you don't know what we need some people to help out, and we need some finances. I don't have the amount of hours that's going to take me. I'm working on my house so I can live in there. The bowling alley is stagnant, sitting there because I don't have the resources to fix it, and I don't have the money. I haven't taken anything out of there. They came twice to do the analysis on it because they've never ever seen anything like this before. So they had to come back again to do another analysis on it. And then the guy told me, because it's becoming tourist season, he's got to go out of town, so he's out of town for 2 weeks, and when he comes back, he'll look at it again. I mean, I'm just sitting there. What am I supposed to do?
Paul, who's looking at it 3 times?
DFA. DFA has looked at it twice already. I mean, thankful for a few things that's happened in the town. I haven't heard it mentioned yet, but these GoFundMe accounts, that's helped the businesses, it's helped homeowners, and that's what's keeping us going. My business is down, my farm is barely running, and I have farm status, and I made an application for the house, I made it for the business, I made it for the farm. They told me to take my application for the farm back because I won't do anything for it. I need to do something for it, otherwise I'll lose my farm status.
That sounds very frustrating. And so your next step is essentially repairs.
It's not my next step. I started actually preparing for the flood when we knew it was going to happen. And since then, I've had 2 days. I took a break and went fishing with my brother for 2 days. And that's it. Every day you get up in the morning and you clean up something, you do something, you try to pick a little bit at a time. It's just overwhelming.
Next up, I see a name tag, which is fantastic. Linda.
Thanks. I feel more discouraged than when I walked in here. Gosh. I have a bunch of questions, but they kind of don't make sense now. The lady in the back corner there, she said that rental property is not covered under DFA. Is that what I heard her say about 5 minutes ago?
Unless it's hermated or something.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Now, I've talked to DFA on the phone. Nobody ever said that. They said, send in your tax assessment forms, we'll look at it. Nobody ever said rental property will not be covered.
Well done. Let me clarify a little further. Rental property, if it's your livelihood, if it's a small business, and your business is renting property, and that is your major source of income, then as a small business it would be eligible. What I meant to say was that if you own a home and you also have a piece of property that you rent out, that rental property is not your principal residence. So it could be eligible as a small business, and that's probably what the staff are looking for, your financials. And if that is your livelihood, then yes, we would be able to support you. But if you have additional income from some property that you rent, that would not be eligible unless it is your livelihood. I hope that helps.
I wasn't quite finished because you also said something about the Ruckle area that's been flooded was declared a floodplain, and that there wouldn't be any support to rebuild things or homes that were built after it was declared a floodplain. When was it declared that? Was that like 5 years ago, 25 years ago, 40 years ago? Like,
I don't have that information.
Does anybody know that? Like, my house is 10 years old. Does that mean I don't qualify because it's too new? Or do I have to be 50 years old for it to qualify? Do you know?
And I suspect that the answer to this specific question I don't have, but in terms of if it's a floodplain, so the city has a floodplain bylaw, which outlines the area that it considers to be floodplain. And I believe that was put in the 90s, although I'd have to look at the bylaw to see. And I don't know how that interacts with the DFA legislation, but I haven't heard anything about not being able to get DFA if you're in the floodplain. It might have something more to do with the flood construction level is most commonly what it's used for, so that houses need to be, if, for example, was built 10 years ago, it would have been built higher than a house that was maybe built 50 years ago, in terms of just looking at what the known flood levels are.
Another question was something about 90 days. 90 days from when my application was sent in and I've heard nothing, or 90 days from when it's looked at, or 90 days is ending the end of the week here. And am I soon going to be disqualified because I didn't jump on the horse right on? I came here 2 weeks after the flood. I went to DFA, kind of got brushed aside. I went to a couple of those other agencies, you know who they are. They all told me I'm a business owner, I don't qualify for any help. I was turned down by everybody I talked to. I was given a bottle of water. Thank you. It costs me $500 every time I get here. I live in Alberta now, trying to survive. I come out here to see what's going on, and I get this. My house is sitting there just like, now I've had it cleaned out, but I need to get it locked up so that it doesn't become vandalized, or maybe squatters, or I'd love to rent it out if it was able to get to that point, but I can't get there because I have no money. I'm living on an old age pension check. That's it. A couple of months before the flood hit, my husband died. The first thing the government did was cut off his pension. So there went that money, there went the rent money that I was getting from the 2 properties in that house. I'm living on a shoestring. Thank God for my credit cards, which will soon bite me in the ass because it's going to be too much. Something has to happen somewhere, somehow. I don't know what, but soon I was going to walk away, and then I got feeling kind of like, so I went and paid the taxes, I paid the insurance, I paid the mortgage, I've still got mortgage payments. Like, when will it end? I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. I can't find any help.
So, I'm sorry I can't really address most of those concerns, but the 90 days, from the time an event is declared eligible for DFA, people have 90 days to apply for assistance. So everyone in this area has until August 22nd to send in an application. So there's no need to worry about missing that deadline. It's still a ways away. Is there anything else you want me to address? Yeah, I'm sorry that I can't be more helpful on other things. I will mention though, for the floodplain, that's part of our legislation that says if a home is built in a designated floodplain and built after the floodplain designation, it needs to be built to the standard defined by the local government for that floodplain. So far, we haven't come across any properties that don't meet that criteria.
And you would not have gotten a building permit, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, so all houses, I'm fairly confident, unless they were done unofficially, in which case you probably wouldn't have a mortgage or anything for them, would have been built to the flood construction level in the floodplain bylaw.
I'm Christine Thompson. I just have a comment for the business community, more particularly those on Market and Second that are still not open. If you are intending to reopen your business, it would be helpful to tourists who are going to be hopefully soon directed into the downtown core that it is your intention to reopen. I haven't seen that when I've walked up and down the streets, and it just might be more encouraging to people who say the name of your business with the paper on the windows to know that you will be back. And I have every confidence that we will be back, bigger, better, and stronger.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Natalie Deminoff, and I own a business on 2nd Street. My intention, it's Natalie's Body Works. My intention is to announce my business opening in August 21st. Is that when you manifested?
Weekend before, yeah.
Okay, then I got it mixed up. It's the weekend before.
All right.
So the thing is, but I'm far from it. Far from announcing that. So Christine, thank you for that reminder. My sign is on my door, but here's my situation. I haven't been assessed yet. And I'm just wondering on the government, the DFA, is it? DFA, thank you. How many assessors are there, and how many of us had our businesses assessed? This is where I'm stuck. You know, I'm stuck with the insurance will cover half of my insures my business end. My personal land isn't covered. I'm running out of financial aid. And I have to wait till August 21st for an assessor to come out. Is there any way that you could expedite that?
If I remember correctly from previous meetings, there's 8 or 9 assessors active in the area, so anyone chime in to correct me if I'm wrong on that. I believe they're working their way through about 500 applications. So it's too bad. I'll leave the question on as to...
He said he's on holiday or whatever, he can't be gotten a hold of.
Which is frustrating for sure, and I'll leave the question as to whether more resources in terms of assessors can be poured in up to the provincial government here.
None of our assessors are on vacation. Most of them work 10, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they really do need to take a week off now and then just to recharge or they burn out. The biggest problem we're having is accommodations. And when there's no accommodations in town, which happened, we took that as an opportunity to send some of them home so that they could have a break. So that's really the reason, it's not vacations.
Okay, so we can maybe make a note there in the notes that having accommodations for the DFA assessors would be a way of speeding things up.
We're all camping. We're all camping though.
Yeah.
We're all camping.
Some of our guys are living in trailers right now. And that's not easy when you're working 12, 15 hours a day crawling under people's homes and not having any, not getting a good night's rest. So they put up with it.
Business up there.
I know, and they're really dedicated. These guys are, I don't know if you've met them, but every one of them is an amazing person. But they also need to take a break, so we've given them a break.
Yeah, it seems to me that every business that's down on Market, the only thing that's holding them back from reopening immediately is money. And I'm wondering if perhaps after the impact assessment surveys have been completed and sent to Jennifer, instead of waiting for ministry staff to siphon through where it's supposed to go and what line item it's supposed to come off of, could the government give us a trust fund and set it up and let the economic team get the money into the right hands, and then let ministry staff figure out where that money should be allocated from later. But let's get the businesses up and running now and worry about which department to take the money from later.
And that is a big, big question that I'm sure we'll take some time to answer.
Okay, so one of the things that Dale indicated was that we need to get across to the media as much as we can that we are open for business, and I realize not everyone is open for business yet. And so this is something that I'm willing to undertake. Social media wise, I'm already filming a documentary about the flood, about the recovery, but the documentary isn't going to happen for a while because it's going to film the entire recovery. But what I would like to do along the way is film flood recovery stories, every little victory that we have, and I'd like to put it as updates on social media, YouTube, Facebook, etc. So I'd like to encourage you to please contact me. I'm all over Facebook. So it's easy to find me there. If you would be willing to share your story, if you're opening for business, I'm more than willing to film you, please. And also, in addition to that, what I need is because I'm working 3 jobs, I'm also fixing my own house, and I'm filming the documentary as well. I could use some funding to help me with this. I'm more than willing to step up and do this filming and social media stuff, but any sources of funding, I have a GoFundMe campaign that would help me not to have to work 3 jobs and rebuild my house and do this. Thank you.
What's your name again?
My name is Jennifer Houghton.
And people can reach you by?
You can reach me on Facebook. Houghton is my name. I'm also a realtor, so you can find me that way.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Hi, John Zibbett, 28 years, Grand Forks, business owner. Just for our city fathers, we'll be dumping in probably $500,000 into our business, and many down on the strip as well. Winter's coming, and we have kind of no assurance or not necessarily a promise, but what happens next spring? Is there some sort of a vision? Do we have a plan? We know there's all kinds of studies going on. We kind of need something to say, hey, this is what we can do for you this year. It may not happen, but is there some sort of a words, or can you give us some ideas what we're doing or what we're looking at or where we're at today?
So it's a bit of a teaser, but come on out 6 o'clock at the auditorium. There will be a discussion on the overview of the river study and some of the options that are being looked at there.
Lawrence Radford, co-owner of the Victorian Motel in Arvage Park. We're up and running, partially. It would be nice to be getting some money to get everything else going. And I'm just sitting back over there and I'm listening to all of the people that talk today. And everybody is worried about downtown. There are more businesses in this town that are still in the city or just out of the city that still need help. But, oh no, it's downtown, it's 2nd Avenue that we gotta help. I'm just a little bitter.
Well, I hear you loud and clear, but I won't let you off the hook if you want to come back. I still need to hear what you need for your next steps, because you said you're only partially up.
Cash.
And what will you do with the cash?
Oh, I have about 14 floors I have to replace. I have 2 furnaces I have to replace. I have about 20 loads of gravel for my RV park that I have to put in. It just goes on and on.
Great, thank you. And I don't see a lot of people coming up here for questions, so I'm going to start picking on people actually. If anyone, oh, that usually works. That usually works.
I was standing in line, but I got tired. So my name's Joan Thomas. I know a lot of you. I'm the office manager at Advanced Nursery. So we really haven't heard from the agricultural sector here, but the agricultural sector was hit really hard. And as you've all found out, you fall between the cracks everywhere. So what do we need? Which is happening. We had a guy at our office this morning doing the business assessment. which they'll also be doing on not just downtown businesses, all businesses that are impacted. We have to gather that information because the government is saying, what do you need? Hopefully, when we put the information there, they'll be faster to get back to us. Because, interestingly enough, we're a farm. There's farm disaster relief. But because we're an incorporated farm, we don't qualify. There's agri-stability, but we don't qualify. There's this, but we don't qualify. We don't qualify for any of the programs, and believe me, I've extensively looked at them all. So I just want to say, the faster we get the information together, the faster we put our needs together. If we could work with a trust that could be for the whole area, and locally, we could help people with immediate needs and document where we gave the money and why. We can figure out the accounting later. I'm a good bookkeeper, I'll do it. But we need to get the information together, and everybody needs to participate in those assessments, and the faster we do it, and then if the government still says no, then we got a bigger problem. So my immediate need, work together, get the information to the government, and make sure they know what we need, and not 5 years from now, not 2 months from now. Winter's coming. This is the time for us to make money. And I'm a farmer, make hay while the sun shines. We're not making much hay.
Okay, I still see no one stampeding up here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Jennifer on the spot to maybe talk about some of the services Community Futures has in terms of small business loans. Can I put you on for that? And while she's talking, if anyone has any last minute questions that they've been waiting on, they can come up and form a line, and we'll have a couple of minutes from Jennifer, and then we'll have the last round of questions.
I think that most people know that Community Futures is a lender. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Susan is in the room somewhere. My co-worker, Susan Green, Business Development, Community Futures. Yeah, you can call Susan. She's got a great program available right now for those who have been impacted if you're looking for that avenue. I hear you loud and clear on the cash and the pocket piece, and the business assessment is the tool for us to get at that.
Okay, I saw one person come up. I'm looking for any other questions, but we'll turn it over to this question here. So don't be shy. If you have any burning questions, if you have anything that might seem irrelevant, but you want to get it out anyways, even if you have any scathing statements, well, now's the time to bring them up here.
One of my problems is that I'm really shy. So my name is Al Pim, and I'm with the Boardroom Cafe, and I guess my need is the same need as all the other business owners, is money. But in some cases, a lot of us have the short-term business loss or income loss. But what we're not, I think, realizing is all of us business owners and property owners, now we have a diminished valuation for our property. Like in some cases, you know, our property, I know of one business person willing, he paid, 20 years ago, he bought his business, and now the valuation is less than a third. And in some cases, because there's actually no buyers in Grand Forks for any commercial real estate, I think our valuation is probably, I don't know, maybe half of what our assessed values is. And the next thought that I had is that a lot of the businesses that are being rebuilt, they're having problems with the insurance companies getting the repairs done in a timely fashion. And my experience, because I've been within the construction industry for 40 years, is that the insurance adjusters already know what the cost of redoing their buildings and houses are. With ICBC, for instance, the adjusters comes, does the adjustment on whatever the repairs are, and then you take it to any qualified ICBC repair place, and they do the work. I don't see why there isn't any reason why the insurance companies can't have the list of the certified contractors, and when repair work has to be done, they adjust it, and then you take it to whomever contractor you want, and then you come and get the work done right away. I know a couple of instances where the contractor that came in to do the initial hack and slash, as I call it, gave a quotation to do the restoration work, and the insurance company said that quotation was too high, and now they have to find 3 additional estimates to get the work done, which delays the whole process. So again, I think short-term money is good because we've already lost half the retirement income.
Thank you. So a good note there on having some sort of either way of facilitating the quotes through with the insurance company and the contractors, or some sort of list. And I don't know if there's any professional associations that certify restoration contractors, anything like that, but that's certainly something to be looked into. Okay, one more question. All right.
I'm Kendra Begg, the Executive Director with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm actually up here on behalf of a couple of members that have sent me questions who couldn't be here today. So the first question that came up, if I remember, was around insurance. So yeah, to kind of reiterate what Alf is saying around insurance, I have 2 members right now who had insurance. They qualified for overland insurance. And the problem they're stuck with was, while their claim was approved, they have not received the quotes from the insurance as to what they're going to cover. So all the quotes as far as rebuild costs, flooring, drywall, electrical, plumbing have all been submitted months ago. I believe it was on May 22nd that they received it. And they still have not received any word back from insurance as to how to rebuild, or as to what's going to be covered or not covered. And we can't take a step forward. And when I say we, it's actually the Chamber of Commerce's office. This is one of our members, and we lease from them. We can't even take a step forward in replacing our contents or flooring or do anything until we know what the insurance for the building is going to cover. So that's a concern, and it's frustrating, I think, that the Insurance Bureau couldn't be here today, could they? That's unfortunate. But so the other question was around DFA insurance. So I know the DFA is here today, so this question was very specific, and I read it a couple of times so I understood it. When you talk about DFA saying that insurance is readily available, I've had a couple of people that have been denied based on the fact that they're saying insurance was readily available to them, but they did not purchase. By readily available, would that not, according to this person, mean that they were informed that it existed? Because when they applied for insurance 10 years ago, there was no overland flood insurance. They renew annually. They sent me a copy of the annual notice that's sent to them and what they're supposed to do. No one sat down with them and said, hey, these things have changed. We now have fire, earthquake, and overland flood insurance. In fact, this person even went into their local insurance provider and asked, was there now flood insurance outside of just sewer and storm backup? And we're told specifically, no, your provider does not offer that. So they didn't renew with new flood insurance, and now have submitted a DFA application, submitted that same form that stated that specifically. No, there was no readily available insurance for them. And DFA apparently looked into it with the insurance provider and found out that no, the insurance provider has been offering overland flood insurance for the last 3 years, but certainly made zero attempt to inform both the insurance rep or the client themselves. Would DFA allow for a secondary review through that appeal process? That was their question. I think she's coming up now.
If I remember correctly, there is an appeal process for anyone who has been denied.
Yes, correct. Everyone can apply and can appeal a decision, whatever it is. And as far as insurance goes, I mean, if the situation is as you describe it, which I'm not saying it is or isn't, I think it almost sounds like there's some negligence on the part of the insurance broker. I'm not sure that that's the DFA problem as much as an issue between the applicant and the insurance company. I know insurance brokers do carry error and omission insurance, and I'm not making any statements whether that was, but if it's as described, it does almost sound like something where the broker was really not meeting the standards of what is considered appropriate in terms of, so the reason you go to a broker is to get that kind of advice. Or you could just go online and buy insurance. So I'm disappointed to hear that brokers actually are not providing the minimum of advice that they should be.
So your recommendation is to have them go through their error omission insurance then, through the broker's insurance?
I can't say. I'm thinking that you should be going back to your broker and saying, what'd you do? You let me down. And find out what's going on. Yeah. And absolutely appeal. The appeals are done through, it's completely outside of my program. So when you appeal, the review of the file and the decision is made by someone who is separated from me. It's not me that looks at the appeal because I'm the person who supervises or manages the program. So I can't even comment on whether an appeal would be accepted or not because for obvious reasons the appeal is not in my area.
Wasn't there supposed to be supplied a letter from the brokerage that you were not eligible or you couldn't
That's
get
right. Our
flood
decision
insurance?
is based on the information from the broker. And if the broker says yes, insurance was available and you know you didn't get it, then we have to base it on.
I know when you filled this out, there was, if you didn't have flood insurance and you you weren't denied it, but you couldn't get it, that a letter from the insurance company on that part was to be sent in with the application.
So the lady's asking about the insurance letter would have not have said that somebody could not have got insurance and therefore should have been using. We would have received that letter. We received the information from the insurance broker for every one of our small business, for every claim, whether it's a homeowner, a tenant, small business, farm, we need that information from the insurance broker. And it's based on that information that we determine the eligibility for DFA. So we apply our legislation based on what the broker tells us.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your questions. It's been fantastic to hear from everyone. We heard a lot of frustration, heard a lot of money questions, and I'm even hearing through sign language that our videographer here, Mr. Les Johnson, has a couple questions of his own.
So a lot of you know me, maybe some don't, but probably most of you have seen what I do. I'm the guy who brings city council and all these meetings to you who can't attend. And I have a website too. I was hoping to assemble a team and I'm really kind of dragging my ass on that. But you guys have a website. And it was the boundary, the Grand Forks recovery thing off of City Hall announced its own website. Could you tell me what that website address is so people know?
You mean our top secret website that we want no one to go to? bfre.ca. So that's where the weekly updates are coming out in terms of from all, not just economic, but the general weekly updates. We have a newsletter. If you scroll down on the page, you'll be prompted to sign up for the newsletter. So that'll bfre.ca, like boundary flood recovery.ca type of thing, but just the BFRE portion of that. Yeah. So the best way to stay informed is through the email newsletter there.
So when the people from High River were here talking to us about what happened there and what we could look forward to, etc., and that there is a possibility that we'll come out of this and we'll be better, etc., I went off and I checked some domain names and I claimed some. And like I said, I have a website now too, and it's kind of fallow right now because it's just me. I'm trying to recruit some people to maybe help out with this. It's rebuildgf.ca and .com, and maybe something will happen with that, or maybe all you'll be able to see is these videos. But I'd love to do a show a couple times a week with people coming in and telling their stories, whether it's from the government or people like you or residents. But I don't have a studio because I'm not a business. I take no money for what I do from the government, from anybody. It's all coming out of my pocket. I used to have 2 pensions, but I just turned 65 last week. Now I only have 1 until I file for my new one. So it's a completely volunteer-driven thing, and I could use some help. I'm not saying, just run to me and offer to help. You kind of have to know WordPress, and you have to not have an axe to grind and try and put aside your emotions to help out writing stuff on the site. But yeah, rebuildgfca@gmail.com. That'll get to me, and I answer that one. I'm on Facebook, but lately I haven't been spending time on Facebook because it's crazy. So you won't find me on there. But if you send me an email there, it'll ring in my pocket and I'll hear that.
Great, thanks Les. Okay, with that, Larry, I think we'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. You did a great job. We're going to take about a 5-minute break at this point in time, and then we want to have you volunteer again to participate in some breakout sessions. We have 5 topical areas here. We have the insurance, loss of income, bringing business back, access to capital, and the agriculture sector. And what we'd like to do is spend about half an hour on each one, and then you can rotate to one more, so you have an opportunity to have input into two of the particular areas. And the way this is more a note to the facilitators of those breakout sessions. We're going to try to do a dotocracy exercise. I think most of you probably heard that before. The first part would be getting a list of what your audience says are the main problems. And you use your dots, you hand out your dots, and you get them to vote on the main problems. That way you can end up with a prioritized list of which problems are touching people the most. And then from there, you move into the solution section of the top 4 or 5 problems that have been identified and voted on. Then you go through the same process, you come up with some solutions for those, and you vote on them. So that way, we get a filtered down assessment and input on what are the biggest problems under those topical areas, and then what are the potential solutions. So we can all take about a 5-10 minute break and then rally yourself around the topic that you want to have the most input into, and I will call out the time to switch over to the next topic. We're going to try to keep it to, we'll try to get you out of here by 4, and so I'll just keep an eye on the clock from there. Thank you very much.